Thank you, everyone. I'm a little nervous. I don't think I've ever made a presentation like this. So, thank you for all coming and a lot of very intelligent and knowledgeable people here. So, I'm a little nervous. I won't deny that. But I hope I can make this a little interesting for everyone. Um, can everybody hear me, sir? Roy, sir?
I can hear you, Chintan. First class. I
Okay.
can hear you
Okay.
loud and clear.
Very clear.
So, before I start, I have to make a dedication to the man who got me onto this path, and no prizes for guessing who that person would be. I won't even name him. Everybody knows. Uh, I my parents were reasonably um, open-minded, but I used to ask a lot of questions in school also, and my teachers were broadly supportive. But the very first person who told me that it is not only okay to ask questions, it is your duty, it is your right, and it is very important to ask questions on anything that you have a doubt on. And it is important to challenge whatever you have heard, written, spoken from any source. Is again Roy sir. So this session is dedicated to him and him only. So I hope I can do justice to the knowledge that I have gained from him over the years, some amount of justice. Um, I would like to say that, while I'm making this presentation, I must say that I don't work in the scientific field anymore. I mean, I have never worked in the scientific field. I only have an engineering degree. I've been a banker all my life. So from a certain perspective, I feel like an imposter here, but hopefully I can talk somewhat intelligently about science for the next half an hour, 45 minutes. I do follow a lot of scientists. You will see a lot of quotes here. There's one on the screen. For those on your phone, I'll still read it out. Carl Sagan, probably one of the greatest science teachers, said that we live in a society exquisitely dependent on science and technology, and yet have cleverly arranged things so that almost no one understands science and technology. And I have to make a submission here. Um, after after I got into IIT, I studied for 4 years. Then I got into banking. And I would say that there was some point of time my own scientific temper, in spite of my background, my attitude, my training, was extremely low. So when he says that almost no one understands science and technology, I still probably don't understand too much, but I feel that even if somebody who's so aware of the importance of science and technology doesn't understand it so much, I shudder to think how the general understanding is outside this group. And that is why I kind of personally take it upon myself to at least talk about the importance of science whenever I get a chance. Roy sir, please stop me or anybody else. In fact, if I'm saying something totally out of line, or certainly if there's something which is factually incorrect, I would like to know it right away. Obviously, I'll have my opinions, which a lot of y'all may or may not agree on. So on that, I would appreciate if you could bear with me, and then we can obviously have a discussion later. But if there's something very factually totally off, please do stop me. Or if I'm getting too off track or boring, please do stop me, because there is not much of a flow here, to be honest. I've just put some of my thoughts and things that I thought were important. The one thing we often get is saying that science can't solve this, science can't solve that. So again, this one quote by Charles Darwin. In fact, it is in one of the chapters in Carl Sagan's important book, Science as a Candle in the Dark, where he says that a lot of people positively assert that this or that problem will never be solved by science. This is, obviously Charles Darwin said this, I don't know, like I think 150 years back or so. The strides that science had made between the last 2000 years up to that point of time, probably science has made as much strides in the last 100 years, 200 years, twice over. The point being that the amount of things around us that science can explain is constantly expanding. And that, if I have to say one thing, I think that is one of the most important things why science is important. It is a growing field. People initially thought of science only as, science and technology and physics, chemistry and maths. But I hope to convince you all by the end of this talk that it permeates art, economics, parenting, meditation, whatever field you can think of. Uh, Yeah, broad agenda is, I try and talk about some principles, or at least principles that, I have found important and which keep coming back to me. Impact on other disciplines, and I'll try to counter some of the uh, allegations against science. I wouldn't use the allegations, is actually probably the wrong word, but yeah, criticisms against science, and I'll try to defend it against those. Uh, I have a slight definition here. Science is the pursuit and application of knowledge and understanding of the natural and social world following a systematic methodology based on evidence. I think the two important words here that I'd like to highlight is, one is social. So science can study the social world as well to a great extent. And the second part, again, obviously, evidence is the most important word there. And the most important tool I feel is the double blind experiment in science. And I think don't want to go into the technical stuff. I think Avdesh sir had said that, maybe I could define science, philosophy, religion, and spirituality, and then in the course, I mean, in this session. But I have not done that. Partly I have not tried it, to be honest, and the reason I have not tried it, because I also believe that these other three aspects, maybe not philosophy, but religion and spirituality, are very personal. We can probably have an entire session on just how to define spirituality, for example. I've had debates for hours and hours with friends that, oh, this is spirituality. No, this is not spirituality. Oh, but this is spirituality according to me. So I've not tried to define it, but I would want to make the point. The point that I want to make it is that science is something that can be reasonably defined. I don't think too many people would have much of a problem with this definition. They might want to tweak it. They might have another definition. But the important words that natural and social world, systematic methodology, application of knowledge, evidence, a double experimentation, any definition of science would probably have these words, at least some combination of these words. And that is why I think it's important, because if we can, there are so many things in the world which is difficult to have a dialogue on, because we can't even agree on what the definition of that word is. But at least in science, we can do that, broadly agree on that definition, which I think is one of the strengths. And as I will argue later, it is a language which is common to a lot of us. So here's how I think about it. I mean, I play this little game with my son, and I was playing it with my friends that, and I try to make it a little more complicated as my son keeps growing, is that, okay, I want you to, the first part was, okay, I want you to distinguish between what is a fact versus what is an opinion. But I think this is a pretty well accepted kind of way of going about it. But science does a lot more than that. I would say that there are various statements. The way I think about it is, how do I distinguish between a fact, a preference, an opinion, a conjecture? How do I prove something is demonstrably true? How do I prove something that's demonstrably false? These are all different statements. But broadly, what I would say is that, science, the first thing that science should do is figure out whether anything that somebody is saying is a preference or an opinion. If it's a preference or an opinion, then that should just go out of purview of the discussion. I mean, there's obviously can be a discussion, but it's outside the purview of science. Some of those who are a lot more sophisticated than me, pardon me, my definitions will be quite loose. So I'm sure you can kind of discount my definitions and not and forgive some of my loose semantics. But I think everybody here is intelligent enough to at least understand what I'm trying to say. While I might not be accurate in my definition, but what science does is um, it tries to deal with possibilities and probabilities, and they are not obviously quite the same. In some cases, science may be able to say that this is possible. It might, however, not be able to say that it's impossible. Um, if it's possible, it might or might not be able to give a probability to it. So there are, again, this is some of the technical stuff, but and an expert in logic would have to take a session on this. It's clearly beyond my ken. But I think that's what science does. It can, if, for example, we are talking about probabilities, it could give a probability definition, or it could say that this, it is possible, but its probability cannot be estimated, or it might say that it's 100% not possible, in which case probability doesn't make sense. But the point that I wanted to kind of make here is that science can do this in the social world as well. Um, Probably not talk so much about possibilities, but certainly it can talk about probabilities. Obviously, there are experiments. Um, Medicine, for example, is not a very mathematical world, but a lot of the medicine that we use is based on experiments. And then there are we obviously have things like various controls and what are the parameters that we will use to track the efficacy of a medicine. So again, that's kind of one example. I have just written some quotes here. Again, kind of gives a slight flavor of the way scientists think about it, encapsulate some of the um, philosophy of science. Einstein said that no amount of experimentation can ever prove me right, but a single experiment can prove me wrong. This again to say is that I remember Roy sir had mentioned on the chat that no statement is ever final. We can only talk about possibilities, and we can say that with every single instance of a statement that we do an experiment on and show it to be correct, that the probability asymptotically goes to 100, but no statement is ever final. I think that's what Einstein was trying to say here. However, the converse is not true. To prove that something is false, you only need to design one experiment. So if somebody makes a statement and if you show even one situation where it doesn't hold, then that's false. Again, I think a while back, a few weeks back, we had this discussion. Roy sir mentioned that an exception does not prove the rule. In fact, if anything, an exception proves that the rule does not hold true. So one exception is enough to disprove a rule. Um, Same thing, a similar something that Arthur Clarke said. I just leave it there. Um, Thomas Huxley said that science is simply common sense at its best, and I included this simply because um, this is how I think about science, and this is how I think it is applicable in daily life. I mean, it could again be as simple as trying to figure out how to go from point A to point B in the fastest way possible, or trying to motivate my son to pick up music, for example. Uh, I think there is a place for science in pretty much everything, and it is merciless to fallacy in logic. I mean, the one thing about science is that anybody who truly wants to pursue science in its real sense, without an agenda, should be very open to have his or her dearest thoughts, feelings, to be dismantled. Um, if we first decide what we want to prove and then try and go about proving it, there is a good chance we'll design an experiment and fool ourselves that what we thought was true. Um, One more thing, again, we had discussed this on the chat that Newton said that if I've seen further than others, it's standing upon shoulders of giants. Science is a highly accumulative process. If I disprove Einstein tomorrow, which is unlikely to happen, but sorry, if somebody disproves Einstein tomorrow, um, it is a huge credit to Einstein himself that he was right on for so long, for example. And and if somebody proves Einstein wrong tomorrow, it would still probably not be that. And by the way, Newton wasn't wrong in the sense that he was wrong in certain cases. So Einstein just basically said that, well, uh, when you apply these conditions, then Newton was wrong. Does not in any way diminish the greatness of Newton. Um, this is a process, this is a principle and an ethic which I think very few fields in the world have. When you get discredited, sir, you were trying to say something? If you get discredited in any if you get proven wrong in any other field, you can get discredited. But very few people today will say that. Most people would still consider Newton as the greatest scientist, one of the greatest, if not the greatest. Uh, Again, Richard Feynman, a legend in some circles, he said that the first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. Um, I would like to mention one more thing. I have seen this quote in the last 20 books that I have read on psychology, economics, philosophy, current affairs, history. Half of the books that I have read, I have seen this quote. It is both a testament to this quote's simplicity and genius, and at the same time, it's a testament to the fact that a lot of other disciplines are also awakening to the fact for the need for scientific rigor. I mean, people are realizing how convoluted the human mind is and how it can trick ourselves. I mean, everybody knows what's going on here. Which line is longer? Everybody knows that it seems that it's line B, but it is actually line A. But I want to make one point here. The point is that even after knowing that the two lines are equal, intellectually knowing that the two lines are equal, our eyes are still confused. Our eyes still don't believe that. The point being that even when we experimentally know something to be the truth, our senses and eyesight, which is probably the strongest of our five senses, would still fail us. We still can't see the truth, even if we know the truth. Now, if something so trivial and so simple is messing with our minds, just imagine the sort of biases that we are living at a more complicated level, where emotions are involved, where tradition is involved, where childhood memories are involved. Our minds are so complicated, we think we know ourselves, but very, very few people do. I mean, I think, I know myself 10-20%, which was maybe 2% some years back. I'm getting better, but I'm aware that there are massive blind spots that I have. And I would argue that there is nobody who doesn't. Again, corollary of what I discussed, to somebody with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. This could be true for me as well. So, if I'm being self-critical, I could say that, oh, I have this hammer of science in my hand. So I'm going around trying to think that every problem can be solved by science. So maybe I have a bias here. I mean, I'm just kind of reflecting here. For somebody else, that bias could be something else, right? I mean, if somebody is a student of psychology, he or she might think that, every problem can be solved if only you understand the human mind, which at some level might actually be true, in fact. But sorry, sir, I'd just like to get some feedback. Like, is all of this like interesting, or should I speed through it, or?
Chintan, go ahead. You are doing very fine.
No, you're doing so well. Go ahead.
Anybody, please. Yeah, yeah. Because this is very new for me. Right? I mean, this is all some random connected thoughts, really. So, okay. Uh, I've made a list of some biases here. Obviously, it's academic. No point kind of going through all of it. But these are some of the various biases that we have. I'll just skip this. Yeah. Again, I just put this quote. I was just a while back discussing about false memories with a friend, and I saw this, so I just put it there that sometimes false memories are so convincing that they replace reality. In I'd probably like to explain this a little bit, and this is something I had read in Carl Sagan's book, "Science as a Candle in the Dark," a few years back. Is that there was this incident in the US a few years back when psychology was becoming very popular, and uh, there were some cases where some women were convinced that they had been sexually abused by their fathers when they were young, and then later on a lot of more research and probing, it was realized that their memories were actually false. Um, I think at that point of time, it had become fashionable and maybe still is in the world of psychiatry to ascribe a lot of problems to childhood abuse. And that is also the time when people started talking about these things openly. There was a sexual revolution. Um, so psychologists were actually planting suggestions in the patient's mind that, oh, maybe what happened to them was because they were abused. And some of these women were convinced. They even had very explicit stories of how they were abused by their fathers or a significant male member in their families. Uh, Again, what I'm trying to point out is that what we think we know, um, that itself can change, and we can be extremely, extremely wrong. I mean, especially things that we learn in times of stress, things that we've learned in childhood, um, or things that we learned a few years back. I mean, our memories can be a very poor indicator of what actually happened. I mean, everybody's seen 12 Angry Men, Ek Ruka Hua Faisla, about how poor testimony eyewitness is, for example. And, Roy sir, as a legal student, also can attest to the fact that eyewitness testimony is not considered a very high bar in the legal process. Um, Various flaws that we are that we do. One is data mining. Don't have to explain this. One is multicollinearity. I just like to give one example, a real life example where I keep talking to a lot of friends about this. A lot of people get into a weight loss program, and then they say that, oh, I did X. I started going to the gym. I stopped having sugar. I stopped having caffeine, and I stopped having, I don't know, some wheat, and I've lost 5 kilos. And I asked them, okay, so which one of those four actually caused the weight loss, right? This is actually a big problem I personally see it as a big problem in the nutrition world, is because a lot of people make wholesale changes in their lifestyle, diet, sleep, alcohol, all of that, all in one shot. And then they assume that, okay, everything is working in their favor without actually knowing what is that only some of those variables would have been important. So again, one classic example of how a very basic scientific concept, or I would even say it's just basic logic actually, but you can call it science if you will, means that simple diagnosis of health and how you can just simply improve your health by changing your diet. And that's why there is just so much misinformation. There's so much bad science happening that if you do X and if you do Y, then suddenly you will become a lot more healthier. And then people get disappointed. But the point is that they don't follow the steps of logic. Um, Similarly, correlation versus causation. There is a very funny joke on Wall Street that there is a very strong correlation between the length of skirts that women wear in New York versus the Dow Jones. I mean, it's just a kind of a lighthearted moment, lighthearted joke to highlight this fallacy that people make. Apophenia is seeing patterns where none exist. I think I don't have to explain it. The romantics see the face of their loved ones in the face of the moon. This is classic that. Um, I'm kind of skipping points here and there. Again, as I said, bit of a ramble here. I wonder, this is what I wonder, why doesn't everybody love science much as I do? I mean, I do love it a lot. And sometimes I feel, oh, this should be obvious, no? I mean, logic, evidence, asking questions, researching something. It's like an investigation. Like, why wouldn't everybody like to be a Sherlock Holmes, right? I mean, it would be so cool. But a couple of days back, I kind of had a bit of an epiphany, and I was thinking that again, a lot of it kind of goes back to our childhoods, where we were constantly told, "Oh, Dadaji ko question mat karo. He knows better. Didn't your teacher ask you to write it this way? Just write it that way. Don't ask stupid questions. You don't know enough. There are things which are beyond your ken." Now, most of us have been told that to a different extent. I mean, I might have been told that to a little less extent, which probably explains why maybe I am a big fan of evidence and fact finding and research and skepticism, and maybe others are not. I mean, I honestly feel that if we want to imbibe scientific temper in our kids, we don't need to teach them physics. We don't need to teach them chemistry. I mean, we should, we can if we want. But anytime they ask a silly question, we should not insult them. I mean, if we do that much, then the next generation will be like twice as. And this is something I see in my son as well, because he asks me a lot of questions, and a lot of them are not science related. I mean, it could be questions about the world war, or I mean, it could be questions on geopolitics or whatever. But he loves asking questions, and I think anybody who has a curious child, I think everybody has a curious child. Curiosity is just not honed. Again, this is something I've learned in my psychology courses that I have done. If a child is shamed a couple of times, you don't know any better. That's destroying that child's curiosity for a lifetime potentially. I think we can have a generational change if we adopt this attitude. Parents don't have to know. Parents don't have to be aware of science itself. The idea is questioning, the idea is skepticism. Never tell a child, you have to do this because I told you so, because then you are kind of clearly saying that, reasoning is not your forte. Questioning is not allowed. So it could be, yeah, I think you get the point, but this is something that I'm very passionate about. So I've probably hammered on it a little bit more than I should have. Some of the criticisms of science doesn't explain everything, but as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't. But the amount of things that it explains keeps growing day by day. Second, there are a lot of things that science doesn't explain, but neither does anything else. So we should be very careful of saying that, well, science doesn't explain this, so I will come up with a supernatural explanation for this, right? I think the right attitude should be, okay, we don't understand it. Maybe we will never understand it. And, we should just be comfortable with that, because I think a lot of damage which is being done in today's day and age, which I think the ancients were very okay with, was the fact that not everything can be known. I think we have this. I mean, when I see I think, some of us, some sections of society, some sections of academics, that everything must be known, which basically means that, well, if science can't explain it, we have to still find an explanation somewhere else for it. Need not be. Sometimes, you just don't know and you move on. Maybe you'll never know. Maybe the next generation will know. I don't think I need to explain this to like the elite audience here that science has caused destructions and the morality of science is suspect. A lot of morality of a lot of scientists are suspect, but then we've discussed that morality of a lot of doctors could be suspect, but that doesn't mean that medicine is not a respectable and worthwhile field. So I think this I'll just skip. Um, yeah, one of the criticisms is that science ruins beauty, pragmatism is boring. Um, I think they're two different fields. I mean, I can enjoy the beauty of a flower while at the same time understanding how color works. Um, I and both have their applications. So if I can explain the phases of the moon, I don't think in any way it takes away from my experience of having a look at it. If anything, I have noticed this personally as well. That the more I have started looking at stargazing from a scientific perspective, the more I actually enjoy looking at the stars. Um, so yeah, that was one comment there. One thing again, I'm kind of put things here that are, but science can't do this, science can't do that. One thing that a friend just mentioned yesterday, in fact, is that well, but science can't measure everything. Science can't measure love. Um, Okay, very, very interesting. But I have a few things to say on it. Scientists have recently done experiments. I couldn't find the link, unfortunately. I will do that after this if somebody's. I saw it on a program on BBC or Nat Geo, where science has done experiments on chimpanzees, or was it bonobos, where they have tried to measure empathy. And I think they were trying to give them some shocks or something in a very cruel way that we obviously humans keep doing, trying to figure out at what point of time they switch allegiance, say from one person to another, from their type to somebody else. It was a very cleverly designed experiment to find out how empathy works in non-humans. Um, and a lot of experiments obviously have been done on animals' emotions as well. So never say never. I can think of thought experiments how love can actually be measured. For those who have read and I think most people here would have read 1984. Um, there was this point where, if I remember correctly, there was this pair of lovers, and both of them were being tortured, and there was no one person was being tortured, and the whole idea was that that person could at any point of time say stop and do it to the other person. Now obviously this is a very cruel way, and this would never happen in our current world. But again, my point is, there can be thought experiments which can someday be constructed, which could even measure. I mean, it might not be a measure in numerical terms, but it at least, for example, it could order in some sort of objective way, how much you love different people in your life. I know, very far-fetched. Um, it's not happening right now. It's not happening anytime soon, I think. But again, with science, I would never say never. If you look at artificial intelligence, people thought chess was the final frontier, and then like AI just like went through it in much faster than anybody anticipated. Um, just a few. I want to just say a few things about science and interaction with some other fields. This was just a science and superstition. I mean, just because we don't believe in these superstitions today, we probably underestimate the impact that science has had in destroying a lot of superstitions that we have followed over the years, which have come from various sources, which were considered scientific at one point of time. Also, a lot of these superstitions were grounded in, I would say, scriptures. I'm not necessarily, I mean, they might be marginal scriptures, right? But they were still being quoted that, oh, this is there in the scriptures, so this should be done. And this is, no, I'm not talking about India. This, I'm, whenever, I mean, this entire talk is all, I'm talking about global principles here. Um, Now we no longer talk about them. We no longer talk about those scriptures, but because we just no longer talk about them doesn't mean that they were not there at one point of time. And we don't give, because something is absent, we don't really appreciate it, right? It's like, somebody makes a phone call and, prevents an air crash. That person's not going to become a hero. But science is like that person, who's made that phone call and prevented an air crash. It's only, so I think, science gets underappreciated because of that. Um, One classic example that like I like to think of is say smallpox. Sometimes I like to maybe joke and I say, okay, the person who or the team of people, unfortunately, even somebody who thinks is aware, I don't even remember that person's name, who invented the smallpox vaccine, was the greatest humanitarian in the world. I mean, he might not have, his idea might not have to actually serve people, but anyway, incidentally, he ended up doing that because smallpox has been the greatest killer. But today, if you ask the average person, they've never even heard of smallpox. So we kind of forget how many strides that science has taken and how it has actually qualitatively changed our lives, so that we can actually um, devote time to pursuits like philosophy and music and art. But I feel that if we if we forget the importance of the scientific progress that we have made in the last, especially 100 to 150 to 200 years, we lose our ability to actually. I mean, we will lose what we have built, and then again it will be about scrambling for food and killing each other over resources. Science and meditation. Science has clearly proved. I mean, this is something we obviously already knew. So science has kind of confirmed independently that meditation is extremely beneficial. The point that I wanted to make here is that um, there are a lot of different schools of meditation, and unfortunately, at least this is what I have got. Like, every time I speak to somebody, they always trying to counsel me that this is not how you should breathe. This is how you should breathe. So like there are 20 different ways of breathing. Now maybe there's a scientific one. I'm not aware of it, but again, I think, like, I personally am an ambassador of meditation as well. In fact, I used to take guided meditation sessions during COVID for people who are dealing with stress. Um, so this is kind of maybe my request to everyone here. I think a lot of people meditate and they know a lot of methods. I think it would be very helpful to spread meditation, to simplify it rather than mystify it. So if my friend, this one person I'm trying to get her into meditation is, I'm like, just sit with your eyes closed for 2 minutes. Just that's it. Let's just start there. I don't care what you're thinking. I don't even care if you're breathing deeply or not. Just sit for 2 minutes and let's start from there. Uh, I think there are a lot of, I mean, maybe meditation has mystical effects. It hasn't had for me, but they've had a lot of real life simple effects, like helping me control my anger, helping me but just be cool down and like responding rather than reacting. So I think, and these things again have been measured by science, and I think I take it upon me. I would urge, if people agree with me, to take it upon themselves to spread this simple message of meditation as just a way to improve your daily life, because not really a lot of people are just struggling with that. They just want to get through the day, be alert at work, not in a stage to have more complicated pursuits in life. So again, yeah, that's what I had to say. I think science can contribute a lot to the spread of meditation as a practice. Um, Science and ethics. There are some people who think science has nothing to say about ethics. I think it's a very controversial field. One of the philosophers and thinkers that I write, Sam Harris, has actually written a book which I haven't read, to be honest, about how science can help us live an ethical life. I mean to do that. Here, I just talk about how it has helped me. For example, I've been reading a lot of books about how geography determines culture and warfare. And I used to think maybe till a few years back, oh, this culture is barbaric, this culture is more peaceful. Till I started seeing that correlation that, well, certain weather, certain mountainous terrain, certain crop patterns can actually explain why certain people are the way they are. Uh, has helped me overcome prejudices. Um, or, for example, just the fact that we can get our DNA testing done and we can test our lineage, right? None of us are pure. I mean, none of us are a pure caste, none of us are pure religion, none of us are pure race. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I could be, again, I don't know the technical terms, but I could have like a 2% Mongoloid gene in me and like 5% African or something, and then Dravidian or whatever those names are. Um, Again, kind of science can help us focus on our shared humanity, which where I think it can be also it can help you understand other people's suffering. I genuinely think that being scientifically minded has helped me a lot in my counseling work with children and to an extent with adults as well, because I'm dealing with a lot of different cultures. A lot of people have done things that they personally are ashamed of. There is a natural tendency for a human being to judge. So for me to overcome that, for me to see myself as a flawed individual, for all of those things, I think a scientific temper has helped. And maybe I'm not uh, resonating with anybody here. I'm talking about psychology and self-reflection using a scientific temper and a scientific bent of mind. But that's something that has definitely, I think, helped me and worked for me. Um, One thing I think what science has really helped us understand is how animals behave, how animals have emotions, have connections. It has helped us understand that animals have some fantastic um, uh, intelligences, which we can't think of. Like elephants, for example, can smell water which is kilometers away, which was just recently discovered. And there's lots of things like that. So um, I think science can teach us humility from that perspective. That I mean, animals are very much sentient. Um, I mean, I know. I think especially Indian culture has understood this for the longest. So again, I'm not taking anything away from that. But I'm saying that now there is a lot more understanding. So which I think is great. So I think science can help with ethics. This is a little bit of a personal experience, so I just wanted to talk about it. I've done a course in REBT, which is one of the most well accepted techniques in counseling. Arguably, it's the most, I would say, non esoteric and easy for even a patient to understand what's going on, rather than, say, complicated psychoanalysis of Freud or Gestalt therapy, which are more esoteric, at least on paper. There are a couple of concepts in this which I think are extremely scientific. Um, so, uh, the counselor focuses on a patient's irrational beliefs, and one of the methods that the counselor uses to counter irrational beliefs is called Socratic questioning. Everybody here is educated enough. I don't have to say what Socratic questioning is, where an empirical disputation of the person's belief takes place. This is something that I wanted to mention because, again, I'm trying to talk about how science pervades different fields in life. Also in REBT, there is a concept of hedonic calculus. I mean, obviously, there are no equations involved, but the whole idea is how humans try to maximize their happiness over time. So, there are, I want to smoke a cigarette today, but, well, it can cause me lung cancer in the future. So, well, what shall I do? Maybe I won't smoke a pack every day, but I'll smoke two. So, all of us are, in some sense, doing this hedonic calculus in our mind to maximize our long term happiness. The two major aims of REBT are survival and happiness. So, yeah, pretty mundane stuff, but a very powerful technique. Again, the fact that you have a psychiatrist, a counselor using a math term is again indicative of how fields are really overlapping nowadays. Um, and I just thought that this was like an interesting. The overall, the entire REBT philosophy and process, I feel is very, very scientific. And since I've learned it, I just wanted to mention that. Um, Science and history, again, I think we were, I think I should probably yeah, I'll talk about science, history, and all politics together. We were also having a discussion about how journalism has become very, very poor. Um, Again, to a great extent, I think all these science, politics, history, journalism are related. Uh, I think, again, the more people are focused on facts and evidence, the more people can even understand how to make out the difference between fact and a conjecture or an opinion or an outright lie. Only then journalism will get better, because unless people have the ability to understand and know the truth when they see it, journalists will I mean, journalists want to sell, right? So if falsehood sells, then they will. If falsehood sells in the garb of truth, they will sell falsehood in the garb of truth. I mean, obviously there will be some upright journalists, and hats off to them, for keeping the candle burning. But I think the tone of the overall discussion was that as a field, it has been deteriorating day after day. Um, I've been having a discussion with a friend on some aspects of science, and some of the stuff that she has been sending me. I had to actually ask her, right, that like, where did you get this stuff from? Because it was I was really worried, what kind of sources are being used by people to spread certain falsehoods about science. Uh, Yeah, science and politics. Sorry, am I audible? I can't move the slide.
You are audible, Chintan.
Yeah, so
What
in
happened?
order to move the slide, oh,
Okay, I got it. Um, the one thing I would just like to mention, I just have this slide out there. I know alternate medicine has taken off a lot. I think a lot of it is useful. First of all, I think there is no better medicine. Personally, I talk from my personal experience, and also having done a lot of research and having spoken to people. I personally think that the best medicines in the world are sleep, water, healthy food, and meditation. But anyways, besides away from that, uh, the point that I wanted to make using this slide is that while there has been a lot of criticism of Western medicine, uh, there are obviously two issues. One is corrupt pharma companies. Second issue is corrupt doctors. But let's just take that aside for a while, and I have just put things here without which we cannot imagine our life. Um, I know COVID vaccination has caused a lot of problems, but except for, like, the far right Americans, I don't think anybody in India at least has a problem with the basic vaccinations that we give our kids. Thankfully, we don't have a problem there. Or surgery, or just like basic dental care. I mean, imagine having your tooth removed without anesthesia. I mentioned smallpox again, which has been eradicated. Again, my point being is that while there is disease, I mean, we've all seen people suffer. Maybe we have suffered ourselves a lot. The amount of suffering that took place only 100 years back, maybe even 50 years back, due to communicable, non-communicable diseases, something as simple as a tooth gone bad, um, or even if something a surgery could be done, you had no anesthesia and you were screaming, even for a small surgery. So I would like just to say that sometimes once a problem goes away, and if it's gone away for 10, 20 years, we tend to forget what is it that made that problem go away. What I want to tell you here is that that problem went away because of years and years of research, evidence-based medicine. There were obviously inputs from other fields. I mean, like chemistry has a big input in pharma, for example. Um, Physics and mathematics are the building blocks. I haven't mentioned mathematics at all, but the one thing that I'd like to mention is that if there is one universal language, potentially, and I say potentially, and I use the word universal very carefully, because if there is an alien civilization out there, good chance it understands the meaning of the word pi. I mean, they might write it differently, but they probably understand what the ratio of um, the circumference of a circle to a diameter means. That's the only common language that I can think of. Maybe they have music, but maybe they don't, because just the way maybe they don't have sound at all. But almost every single concept that I can think of is potentially a generation of the human mind. Mathematics is a language that not only humans understand, arguably some animals also understand that. And if there are other intelligences or aliens in this world, they also potentially understand that. And math is basically, I would say, the language of science, certainly the language of physics. And then somebody very interestingly told me that uh, physics is nothing but applied maths, chemistry is nothing but applied physics, biology is nothing but applied chemistry, uh, whatever, psychology is nothing but applied biology, sociology is nothing but applied psychology, economics is nothing but applied sociology, so on and so forth. So yeah, that's I think all I had to say. Uh, yeah, just one random thought. What if I honestly don't know? I think this is from one of the Upanishads, right, sir? Asatoma Sadgamaya. I just thought,
Upanishad.
yeah. I just thought I'll put it here. I mean, what if whoever wrote this was talking about science to lead us from darkness to light? Science is at least one of the tools to lead us from darkness to light. So this is more wishful thinking. I don't know what this gentleman meant, but I certainly think that science is a candle in the dark. Um, it doesn't solve all the problems, but it does give us enough light to look at problems more deeply. It at least solves some lower level problems. I mean, that I think is undisputable, that it solves some lower level problems so that we can move up the Maslow's hierarchy. Yeah, so I know I mean, this my talk was more psychology and then I would say physics, but I hope you all enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Excellent, Chintan. As I expected, amazing session. Now, those who have some questions can ask. Ashutosh sir will anchor it from here. Any questions? Dipankar Da is always asking questions. So Dipankar, your turn now.
No, I had raised my hand quite some time back, It was in the context of a slide.
I,
Mr. Chintan, you can stop sharing the
I,
screen
I,
okay. No,
unless you have something
I,
specific.
if you wanted me to go back, I could go back to the
no,
slide.
you won't have to go back. You will
Okay.
remember it. You had mentioned a word called data mining in one of your slides, and I think I missed what you wanted to say about data mining. I mean, what is your opinion about data mining? That I think I missed. That's why I normally don't interrupt.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And I have one more comment, but first this one. Data mining was the first line in one of
Oh,
the...
data mining. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, data mining. I was just trying to say that. I mean, once we have a conjecture, I think we use this very often in finance. That once we that most of us traders first decide that we think interest rates are going up, and then we try and find articles which explain why interest rates should go up. I mean, that was my idea.
Okay. No, I mean,
Yeah.
I may not agree to that. I agree so much with you. You almost speak my mind in a better way. But I think data mining has lots of positives, particularly the segmentation part, which or clustering. Also, it uses it's not always just neural network. No, it uses well-proven statistical methods like.
No, sir. Let me reframe myself. Data mining, I think, is an amazing tool. I'm there with you. I mean, all these tools are just fantastic. What I was trying to say is that sometimes we overfit, right? I mean, the classic case could be like if you have 10 points.
Overfitting is a known problem. Yes.
Yeah, if you have 10 points and you use a 10th degree polynomial, then obviously you have like 100%.
That sure.
Correlation.
Yeah. That is one problem.
Coefficient R square is 100% then, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes, I mean, you'd be surprised how often we had an intern on our desk who did a project recently, and what he did was classic overfitting.
Mm-hmm.
And most people on our desk could not even get it. I'm like, they're like, it's amazing results. I'm like, but it's classic overfitting.
Right.
So again, the decision, what I'm saying is, if the mind makes the decision a priori and then looks for reasons, then you can always trick yourself into
Yeah, I agree. Again, we are in agreement. In fact, there are lots of interesting jokes about association.
Correct.
Association is ridiculed the most.
Correct. Exactly.
Like Friday evening in USA, people tend to buy beer and diaper together.
Yes.
It's a very stupid association.
So
yeah.
We shall stop it there. Any more questions?
No, I had one more comment.
Okay, please.
Can I? Okay.
Yeah, please go ahead.
It is on the topic of science and ethics.
Right.
I think maybe someday you can speak a little more on that, because ethics to me is not very well defined, and wherever I try to define it, it gets layered. For example, right?
I absolutely agree, sir. It is. That's why I said, it's a highly growing field. Ethics is difficult to define, let alone talk about the possible interplay between science and ethics, which right now is anyways, I think, at a very minimal level.
No, I particularly, I don't know where the line is. I mean, how much you should get into genetics, I really don't know.
Actually, I think, please excuse me, I think we shall put ethics on some other day. We shall be going into a mind, not data mine, but minefield.
No,
ethics we shall...
It's a minefield.
It will be a minefield. Ashutosh?
That's what I proposed also. And what I should have said in the beginning, let me say, I loved your presentation.
Thank you.
Ashutosh, you have raised your hand. Ashutosh?
Yes.
Did you raise your hand?
Yes, I raised my hand, and I have a. In fact, firstly, yeah, I'll repeat what Mr. Dipankar said, that it was a lovely presentation. And Mr. Chintan, thank you for covering the point which I had suggested, that how to teach science to the youngsters, to the school students. You briefly touched upon that part as well as a
Again, it's a
parent.
very, very vast topic, right? So I couldn't I
Yeah.
wanted to just cover some things that are important. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I have a related point, and this is not exactly a question. Maybe a suggestion, which not only I'll request a response not only from you, but the other gentlemen on this call. And I'll briefly narrate that particular situation. I was teaching my nephew, a class 9 student, class 8 student, and I was teaching him about the atomic theory. So I started with Dalton's atomic theory, and then Thomson's model, Rutherford's model, and all that, up to Neil Bohr's model, and then the modern atomic theory and all that. So after he understood everything, and he was taking interest also. But his question was, if all the previous theories were wrong, why are we studying it? And of course, I know many kids keep asking such questions.
Yeah.
I answered in my own way, but I'll request a response from you and the audience here, if somebody has a.
Sir, I think a lot of people can tell you how to respond, but the first thing that I would do is to I would say to tap him on the back and say that it's a good question.
Yes, I did that. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I didn't. How the other part, sir? I think there are a lot of smarter people. How to tackle with that question? I just want to say that is what you should always do.
Arun
Can I
sir,
come in, Ashutosh?
yes, sir. I was looking for a response from you. Yes.
Yeah, actually, once long time back, I had written in the group, it's very important to teach the history of science.
Yeah.
Of course, the time was not there, space, I did not elaborate, but history of science is very, very important. First of all, if one does the history of science, he gets the background and the mind space of the scientists who have worked earlier than the latest, supposed to be the latest theory that we know. It also makes you understand the theory much better. But presently, in your case, it's a very, very simple question that we are all evolving. My father used to use radio, then we use TV, and then now use mobile. So I mean, it's a developing world. So scientists are trying to see things. Chintan has very beautifully explained. I think his one line in the beginning of the talk was, Newton was not wrong completely. Or if I find some mistake in Einstein's theory, that still is a credit to Einstein. That still is a credit to Einstein. This is exactly what he said in the beginning of the session. And I fully agree with him. So once Chintan and I used to meet, I used to say, I mean, of course, by now it is a very common thing that even if somebody fails to arrive at a result, that also is a success. That also is a result. If iron does not react with water, it's not a failure. That also is a success. I think I have slightly allowed myself to fritter away. But the answer to your question is those theories are not wrong. Dalton talks about atom till today. What Dalton talks about atom is right. Till today, what they talked about molecules is right. Other scientists went inside the atom. So Dalton was not wrong. So similarly, Rutherford was not completely wrong. I mean, I can keep on going. I love to speak on these things. He was not completely wrong. Had he been wrong, he would not been getting the Nobel Prize for that. Some improvisations happened. I will end this with, I think to my mind, a very, very, very important line which I share with all my students. What happens in science? Well, science is building and destroying the models. In science, what we are doing, we are creating models, and there are some changes that are happening. So we are destroying the old model completely or making some changes in the old model. It's the creation of and redundancy of models. So Dalton found one way of explaining. Other people found another way of explaining. When you are creating a model, this is very important to my mind. How does a scientist create a model? He creates a model depending on at least two things: the science known to him beforehand and the mathematics known to him beforehand. I mean, obviously, he's not creating a new science, he's not creating a new mathematics. He is using the science and mathematics known to him to create a model. Now, what happens parallelly when some new ideas of science or maths come, in the light of which the model goes wrong, then a new model comes. So it's not that the model was not wrong. Model was right as per the science and mathematics known to him or her at that point of time. And I shall again end with what I said. I mean, this is history. This is the history of science. So basically, we are going into the mind of science, not scientist. How science evolves.
Sir, can I just add one point, not to this, but there was one slide which I think I missed out. And this is because somebody had asked the question, I don't remember who, to cover finance and science. And basically what I was trying to say is that the two finest minds that I think are there in finance, they have spoken about the importance of there are two, I think, great sets of investors. One is Jim Simons, who has the best investment, who's run the best hedge fund with the best investment for the 20-30 years. He's purely mathematics-based guy. He hires only PhDs from art and history and physics from the top universities. And it's purely a math-based, evidence-based model. The other hand, there is obviously, everybody knows, there is Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. Charlie Munger has this set of psychological biases. He's made a great speech a few years back at one of the top universities where he talks about these 20-25 biases that human beings have. So I would go as far as saying is that there are thousands of people who understand enough economic theory and know the mathematical models of investing and cash flow discounting and how to value a company. But there are only a few people who, on top of that, understand their own psychological biases. First, they know the psychological biases, and second, they know that they have them, and they have the wherewithal, and they have been the best investors in the markets. The people who have overcome that and understood that. So, in fact, what Charlie Munger, who's one of my, I would say, top 5 personal favorite heroes, not just in financing, but finance, but overall. He says that if you want to become a good investor, you need to understand the top 1 or 2 theories in every field in the world. So you should know the top 2 theories in economics, finance, accounting, chemistry, physics. And if you read his biography, you kind of keep coming across, names of scientists who have really influenced him. So this is that bit which I had missed out. A little bit about interface of science and finance.
This is great, Chintan. I mean, when we used to discuss science is not just chemistry or math, that scientific temper is trying to know about as many things around you as possible, and which means history and economics. So you have put it very, very beautifully and succinctly. And one other thing about science, science is not a human being. Science is not a country which is run by a constitution. Science is not a society which has its sets of law. The mistake which most of us do while commenting on science, I mean, it's an individual effort. Basically, a scientist is an individual. Of course, brought up in the society, so he knows about some more laws, some more theories, but some idea can strike you. That idea can strike a philosopher or an economist or a sociologist. So let's not try to categorize science. Science, to my mind, is something beyond category. And once we categorize, then we start with those prejudices. Science can do this, science cannot do this, as if science is some Mr. God, Mr. Powerful. So this one line I would like to end up, that science is not one human being, one country, one society. Its idea comes. It can come to anybody. He can take any other approach. You can call it science. You need not call it science. But there is nothing science like one unified body. That mistake, I think, mostly we commit when we make a statement on science. It is not a unified body working under set of laws, except it probes, as Chintan said, and number 2, it has to verify. So some people say everything cannot be verified. Science is the first one to accept the limitation. If this cannot be verified, we shall not bring it into science. So I'm done with her.
Mr. Dipankar has raised his hand again.
I just wanted to add to what Arunji said that, or maybe this is one point which all of us generally miss. Another big force which drives science is trade. In fact, trade not only drives science, trade also spreads the results of science. So I think that's an important point, and I'm actually adding to Arunji's point. That's all.
So Ashutosh, take it over. If there are no questions, I'm very sure from tomorrow or tonight itself, the group will be flooded.
Yes,
So
yes. In fact, I just wanted to narrate a very interesting anecdote. I mean, I find it interesting, if you allow me, just 2 minutes, and something aligned with what you said just now, Arun sir. So yeah, I hold a unique distinction. I had 3 snake bites in my life,
Wow.
3 snake bites at 3 stages, and this is directly related to how science evolved. So when I was a kid, maybe I was about 10-year-old or 9, 10-year-old. So I had gone to my village, or we all were playing because we had gone during summer vacation, and I had a snake bite. Of course, that was a non-poisonous snake, so nothing happened. Just that everyone took me to the hospital, and then the snake was identified. Nothing happened to. Second time, it was a crate, and what I did was. I just made a incision because I had read in my science book that you have to make an incision and then apply some potassium permanganate and all that. Those days it used to be taught. But then later on, the third time when I had a snake bite, that theory was not holding good anymore. It was just told that you just need to wash it with soap and water, tie it up with some cloth to the nearest bone, and go to the doctor. That is what was done. So 3 instances, and the way science developed, the previous theory was probably found flawed or wrong or whatever, and that's how these 3 situations were handled. So I just thought I'll share this experience.
just one line. I'm sorry for taking it too long. This line came to me exactly 2 hours back by one of the top 10 Vedantis in the world. One of them, he happens to be a Swiss Indian. He made a beautiful statement, which now I remember. He says, once you describe Shiva, once you give a stuti of Shiva, 10 different persons will develop 10 different types of images of the same Shiva. I mean, nothing new. All of us, we know about it. What he's saying that there are different images. The two images might not, mostly do not coincide. So then what happens? Then the Chintak means thinker. Like again, I'm quoting Chintan. He finds his own limitations. The Chintak thinker is the one who is aware of his own limitation, who is not afraid to accept it and go ahead. To my mind, I think science does that. Science does that, Ashutosh. That they are least afraid or least hesitant to accept the mistake that they have done, and they move further.
Right.
Charavati.
Charavati, yes. Thank you.
Chintan, it was a beautiful session. I mean, as good
Yes.
as I expected, actually much better than that. And it was an amazing session, Chintan. And rest I shall talk. I mean, people will think it's a mutual appreciation program, so I shall not talk much about you. But it was a beautiful session, Chintan.
Thank you, sir.
It was excellent.
Thank you for trusting me and to do this. So that means a lot.
So, okay,
Thank
just
you.
one line. Because you have made the statement, Chintan was not very comfortable getting the session recorded. So he said, sir, I have two options, either not to go into minefield or make it linear. I said, the Chintan I know and the Chintan I respect, from whom I would not like to have any reservations. So go ahead and enjoy yourself, Chintan. And you did that. Thank you, Chintan.
Thank you. So I'll stop recording now.
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you, everyone.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. England match and still people came.